You have never bought anything from this company. You have never seen its product. You could walk past its office and feel absolutely nothing. And yet, right now, it holds a stake in the company that made your phone, a stake in the airline you flew on last, a stake in the bank that holds your money. You have been interacting with it your entire life. You just never had a name for it. Here's the part that should actually unsettle you. It's not that this company is hiding, it's that you were never built to notice it. The name is BlackRock. This isn't a story about a villain. There's no mastermind twirling a mustache here. That's actually the part that should bother you more. Because if this was a conspiracy, you could fight a conspiracy. This is something stranger, a mechanism so quiet, so mathematical, that it slipped past every alarm a society has for noticing power before that power finished arriving. In 1988, a 35-year-old man named Larry Fink sat in a spare bedroom in Manhattan with 7 partners and a phone. No product, no storefront, just a method, a way of calculating exactly how much danger was hiding inside financial products that looked perfectly safe on paper. Wall Street at the time was flying blind. Banks were trading enormous bundles of mortgages with no real idea what was inside them. Fink built the tool that could see inside the box. He called the firm BlackRock. Here's the one word you need to actually understand this. Index. Most investment firms try to beat the market. They guess, they bet, they lose half the time and charge you a fee either way. BlackRock buys the market, the whole thing. When you put your money into an index fund, you're not betting on one company. You're buying a sliver of every major company inside that index. BlackRock runs the largest index operation that has ever existed. It's called iShares. And the mechanics of iShares are the actual reason BlackRock ended up holding a piece of nearly everything. Here's the part that should make your skin crawl a little. Nobody at BlackRock sits in a room and decides, we believe in this company. If a company is 7% of the index, BlackRock holds roughly 7% of it automatically, mechanically, not because of belief, because of math. Multiply that single rule across trillions of dollars, across hundreds of funds, tracking hundreds of indices across dozens of countries. And you get something that's never existed before in human history. As of late 2025, BlackRock manages more than $13 trillion. Let that actually sit for a second. The entire GDP of the United States, every dollar of output from every 300 million people in a single year, is around 28 trillion. 7 people, 1 phone. Now manages assets equal to nearly half the output of the most powerful economy on earth. But here's where I need to correct something most videos about this topic get wrong. BlackRock is not the single largest shareholder of most major companies. That title almost always belongs to Vanguard. In Apple, for example, Vanguard holds about 9.4%. BlackRock holds about 7.7%, second place, not first. That correction should make this scarier, not less scary, because it means this isn't really a story of one company. It's a story about 3. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the so-called Big 3. Together, they sit among the top stakeholders of nearly every major public company in America, not occasionally, structurally, by default. Because that's simply what happens when index investing becomes the dominant way of entire country saves for retirement. Economists gave this a name, common ownership. And it raises an actual, contested, unresolved question in the field of finance right now. If the 3 firms hold meaningful stakes in every major airline at once, do these airlines still compete on price the way you'd expect? In 2018, 3 economists, Azar, Smalls, and Teku, published a study in the Journal of Finance that found routes with higher common ownership were correlated with higher ticket prices. It became one of the cited papers in the history of antitrust economics. But here is what most retellings of the story leave out. Other economists pushed back hard. A later replication found that once you correct certain assumptions in the original methodology, the statistical relationship disappears entirely. The debate is still open. Nobody has definitively settled it. I am telling you that not to undercut the point, but because the honest version of this story is actually more interesting than the viral one. Even the experts studying this can't agree on whether it's quietly hurting you, and that uncertainty is its own kind of unsettling because it means a structure this large can exist, shape incentives across an entire industry, and we still don't have a clean, agreed upon answer for what it's actually doing to the price you pay. Here's what isn't in dispute: BlackRock has never been convicted of antitrust violations. It operates legally inside every rule that currently exists. The real question was never whether it broke any rules, it's whether the rules were written with a structure like this in mind at all. When BlackRock votes its shares at a company's annual meeting, it isn't one voice lost in a crowd. It is sometimes among the loudest voices in the room on who gets elected to the board, on executive pay, on which long term strategies get approved. And here's the part that's genuinely hard to sit with: BlackRock doesn't hide. Larry Fink writes a public letter every year read by CEOs around the world. Its holdings are public record, filed quarterly with regulators. You can buy a piece of BlackRock yourself today in about 30 seconds. It was never a secret. The reason that almost nobody noticed isn't that it was hidden, it's that the structure was so abstract, so deeply buried inside the plumbing of modern finance that there was never a clean, simple story anyone could easily tell about it. It didn't conquer the world in one dramatic moment. It became the infrastructure the rest of the world quietly runs on top of, one index fund at a time. In 2008, during the financial crisis, a Federal Reserve brought in BlackRock to help manage toxic mortgage assets that nobody else knew how to properly value. In 2020, when COVID crashed the markets, the Fed brought BlackRock again, this time to help design and run the emergency corporate bond buying program that helped stabilize the company. Sit with that for a second. The same firm advising the government on how to manage the crisis was at that exact moment also one of the largest investors in some of the very companies being supported. Nobody in that room thought they were doing anything improper. They were likely right. But what was happening was something stranger than wrongdoing. It was proof that a private institution could have something close to the functional reach of a government without a government's level of public accountability. So here's the actual question that leaves you with. You spent your entire life inside a financial system built from decisions you never made and were never asked to inspect. None of that happens inside a vacuum. It happens inside a structure. And that structure is shaped more than by any vote you ever cast, by where the largest pools of capital in the world quietly choose to sit. You didn't choose BlackRock, but your pension fund probably holds it. Your retirement account's index fund almost certainly feeds it. This is not a conspiracy. A conspiracy requires secrecy. This was always visible to anyone who knew where to look in public filings, in quarterly disclosures, in shareholder lists attached to nearly every company you've ever given your money to. Almost nobody ever looked. You were never kept in the dark. You were just never handed a flashlight. What you do with this one is yours to decide.